Welcome to Off the Page, the show where we talk with Colorado authors to get the story behind the story. I'm Stacy McKenzie, a librarian here at Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Public Library in Broomfield. And today I'm very happy to have Cricket McRae on the show, or who is she? We have three of her books here with three different names on them. We have Bailey Cates, we have Cricket McRae, and we have Casey McRae. Thank you for being on the show, first of all. Now explain, who the heck are you?
I'm Cricket McRae.
Okay.
And I also write as Casey McRae and as Bailey Cates. So Casey McRae has one book out. It's a standalone. And it's a little different from the other books that I write. I write cozy mysteries typically. I have two series. One has sort of a paranormal element to it. And cozy mysteries are typified by very little swearing, if any. No on-screen sex, not a lot of graphic violence. They're often considered traditional mysteries, kind of modeled on Agatha Christie or Josephine Tey. And Shotgun Moon, which is the Casey McRae book, is a little different from that. It's mainstream. It's mainstream mystery. It's a contemporary Western. And it has sex and it has violence and it has all that good stuff. But I didn't want my readers to get surprised when they opened it up and said, "Oh, that's not what I was ready for."
Yeah.
So,
three different genres. You're just trying to have a little something for everybody, and that's great. So let's talk about the first set of books, your cozy mysteries, Bailey Cates.
okay.
I love this series because it's about cats and food. Is a reoccurring theme. What about that appealed to you?
Oh, well, I love writing about food. And in fact, in all my books, even Shotgun Moon, I talk about food.
So all the books have food.
All
Some
the
are
books have-
cozier than others.
Yep,
I'll do-
and they have recipes of some kind. Shotgun Moon doesn't so much, but there are recipes in the back of the other two series. And I just love food. And I love to cook. I post recipes on my blog. And so having an opportunity to write about a bakery, a witch in a bakery who then not only gets to bake, but to add these special ingredients, these, using spices and herbs to cast little spells into her food to help her customers. I mean, what a treat, what fun. And the research isn't bad.
Cricket, I understand you actually have sort of an herbalist background, is that correct?
I studied with a master herbalist for a while. I didn't complete the apprenticeship, but it was several months, and it turned out that he was also a druid.
Oh.
And so he actually practiced the kind of magic that my character practices, which is sometimes called hedge witchery or green witches, natural witches, and they were the healers in the village that would live on the edge of town, and then they would literally cross the hedge into the fields and the forest that most of the villagers were afraid to go into to gather their herbs and to bring them back to heal people in the village. And then there's another element of hedge witchery, which is crossing like the veil into the next world. So it can have a double meaning.
Wow. And so your book has a modern take on some of these supernatural things.
There are still hedge witches. They're practicing hedge witches.
Is there a bakery with one? Because that sounds marvelous. Just in your book.
Not that I know of, but yeah.
Well, and much like librarians usually have cats, witches often have cats.
Right.
What do the kitties play a part in your books?
Well, the Honeybee Bakery is named after my main character is Kitty Lightfoot, and she has the bakery with her aunt and uncle, and her aunt is also a hedge witch. And Honeybee is an orange striped kitty that is her familiar, her aunt's familiar. Katie is allergic to cats, though, and so her familiar is a Cairn Terrier named Mungo the Magnificent.
Oh, so we have cats and dogs.
Cats
Something
and dogs.
again for everybody,
Yeah.
Cricket.
And I think there's a cat and a dog on most of the covers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the covers. The covers are adorable.
Aren't they pretty?
They really are.
love
Tell me
them.
about the covers.
Well, I don't know who designs those covers. They're the publisher, Penguin, hires them, and I think they're the independent vendors, and I don't know their name. So it's a separate part of the whole entity. And then the audiobooks have different covers, and the large print have different color covers. So, you know, they all sort of take off on this original, but I just love what it's a woman, I do know that. And it would kind of have to be, I imagine, but, you know, all of the swirls and
the colors really nice.
and how she brings the elements of magic in. I really, and the colors.
She must
They're very,
read the book because she does have so many of the wonderful elements in there.
yeah, I think so. I hope so.
But a little bit more on how that works. So you had a publisher who accepted your book, and then when you submit the book, they take it from there?
Pretty much. Well, they certainly do the cover design. I mean, I get approval.
Mm-hmm.
They ask me for ideas. They're like, what colors do you think would be good for this one? And do you have any ideas for scenes in the bakery? And so I sort of sketch out a paragraph of, well, it would be good to have Mungo in this, and this one, you know, may involve Halloween. And so, and the first one was called Brownies and Broomsticks. So there was a broomstick on the cover in the corner. So I just added that information into the they have what they call a cover conference, and they talk about that, and they talk about the title at that point too. So I give them suggestions for titles, and sometimes they take them, and sometimes they do something different. It depends on what the committee decides on.
So this series is the Magical Bakery Mystery Series?
It is.
And how many books are in this series?
Let's see, that's the 4th one. It just came out in July, and I'm finishing up the 5th one, and there will be a 6th one for sure.
Wonderful.
And I have lots of ideas for more.
We're gonna keep going as long as you can.
As long as I can. They're fun to write.
They're really fun to write, and all the elements appeal to so many people, I think. You've really got a lot in there. Yeah. And people seem to really be drawn to a supernatural element in stories nowadays. Now, I could see where you brought that from some experience you had. But why are people so drawn to the supernatural these days especially?
You know, it's funny because they keep saying that that's going to fade away. Especially, and there's the whole supernatural aspect of vampires and werewolves, and that's become a whole genre of its own. And paranormal mysteries tend to be more ghosts and spirits and witches, and there are several mystery series that involve witches with small businesses, and they're very, very popular, which is why there are so many publishers like that at this point. I think that it's an escape from real life. I mean, don't you want to, as far back as Bewitched, you know, didn't you want to be able to twitch your nose and have your house cleaned?
Yes, still do, yes.
And it's something that I don't think that we lose from childhood, that sort of wish fulfillment. So I think it appeals to that sense of fantasy.
And even the herbal aspect of it. A lot of people are getting more in touch with their health and finding out what herbs can do, and then they can do even another level of thing in your book,
right?
Which really elevates it. So.
Well, and a lot of the things that they do magically, they do practically too. I'm interested in aromatherapy, and a lot of the aspects, the healing aspects of the herbs and the spices, or things like prosperity or confidence or you know, being attractive or something like that. These are things that are actually supposed to come from, you know, internalized from aromatherapy. So you smell rosemary to stimulate your creativity.
Yeah.
And so is that magic? Is it?
Seems.
So there's sort of a fine line between what's magic and Katie uses her intuition a lot. She believes in the power of intention. So is that magic? Because that's also a very popular thing. Mindfulness. So it all kind of dovetails together.
It's just got a lot going on in the book, but with, you know, paranormal but grounded a little bit. So I just love it, and very excited. There's going to be at least 6 of them.
Thanks.
Hopefully more. Let's talk about Shotgun Moon. Tell me what that book is about.
It's about a woman who has just been released from prison after she was wrongfully convicted of manslaughter for killing her rapist in self-defense. So that's a little different, isn't it?
We've gotten darker.
Right. So she returns to her hometown in Montana, and it's in the Bitterroot Valley. It's right around where Stevensville really is, on Highway 93. And so she gets back there, and her mother has died since she's been gone, and her cousin is accused of murder. And so she doesn't want her to be wrongfully convicted the way that she was, so she steps in to find out what really happened.
Wow.
So.
Yes, much different than our Happy Witch Bakery kitty cat place.
Yeah,
yes.
She's a grittier character, definitely.
Much grittier. And so that makes me wonder, how did you come up with Shotgun Moon? That's one of your more recent books.
Yeah, it came out last year.
And so you'd already been writing the Bakery Mystery series. So where did these ideas come from?
I carried Shotgun Moon around for a while in my head, or at least the character, Mary McCoy. She's sort of a distillation of a lot of women that I've known growing up in the West. My family's I was born in Laramie.
Okay.
And so I've lived in Wyoming and Colorado most of certainly growing up. And I have family in Montana. And there is a grittiness to life, certainly not as much anymore, but I got all sorts of stories from my grandparents and my great-grandparents, and coming across in covered wagons and the things that they had to face, and yet these were people that in their 80s and 90s had not been beaten down by it. They had risen to the occasion. And so I wanted to have that be a part of a modern character. Somebody who's been through a lot and gets right to the edge of that like brittle bitterness, but doesn't go there. So.
What is the setting of Shotgun Moon?
It's in Hazel, Montana, which is a small town.
A real place?
It's based on, not really.
Okay.
No, it's fictionalized. But there are several small towns on Highway 93 that goes from Missoula south down to Idaho. There's Darby and Hamilton and Stevensville. And so I sort of picked a place in there and dropped this town in there, and gave it some characteristics of just a lot of small towns in Wyoming and Montana.
Yeah, where some of this stuff goes on and some of these gritty people exist.
It still exists, absolutely.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your third offering here, Deadly Road to Hoe. Now, it looks a little grittier too.
It does look a little grittier. It's not.
Okay. Are we back to cozy?
We're back to cozy,
Okay,
and that was my first series. And they're the home crafting mysteries.
Okay.
And I have a particular interest in colonial home crafts. And so that's the backdrop for all of these mysteries. There are 6 of them at this point. And the protagonists, they're set in the Pacific Northwest, north of Seattle. And the protagonist is a soap maker. And so the first one has to do with soap making. She has an online business. They're contemporary.
Yes.
But she has an interest, like I do, in the same things that I have an interest in. And so there's one about food preservation, as a backdrop to all the murder and mayhem.
Yes.
There's food preservation, and there's spinning and knitting, and there's cheese making and dairy craft, butter and yogurt and things like that.
Can people get an insight on how to do these things by reading?
There are some instructions and recipes in the back for all of that sort of thing. The one about cheese making is actually set in Colorado because she's originally from Spring Creek, so it's Fort Collins, really, which is where I live right now. And there's one about meat, and then this last one is about community-supported agriculture, so it's vegetable gardening.
Oh, wow. So you really try to sort of give a little information with your books, in addition to, as you said, the mayhem and stuff that happens when you're not expecting it.
I just like reading books that I take away stuff from. So
very true.
Yeah.
I love that home crafting. You can learn a little bit of homesteading as you go along.
Yeah, a little bit. People used to have to know that in order to survive. So.
And it seems like there's a resurgence of that. People are really trying to go back to growing their own herbs, preserving their own food, and maybe not, proving that they've been wrongly accused of a murder, but in your other series, it does seem like people are coming back to that, and so that's a big appeal in your books. Did you mean to write it that way? As a marketing?
No, I didn't intend it that way, but I do think that I worked at Microsoft for years, and when I left the corporate world, I found myself doing things that I could hold in my hand at the end of the day as much as possible. Make jam or garden or, I learned how to make soap at that point. That's when I learned how to spin, because something about the tactile and actual, tangible result of doing something all day, as opposed to, well, I manage a team and I do a lot of negotiating and I work with some numbers and there's a bunch of stuff out there in the ether, and describing what I do as a manager at Microsoft isn't terribly easy. Yeah. But I can say at the end of the day, after I've made a bunch of raspberry jam, I did this. And that's what really got me to writing about, and I had a little soap making business for a while. Okay. That sparked Sophie May. And then I decided I'd rather read it or write about this instead of make soap.
Well, so you've got 6 of the home crafting series. Is that correct?
Yeah, 6 of those.
Are we looking at more of those coming up?
Not currently.
Okay.
Not currently.
Cricket, are you going to have to learn a new home crafting method in order to write another book in that series?
I think I could probably tap into something else that I've got around.
Okay.
But I'm busy with some other things right now. I have another series possibly in the offing. I haven't heard yet, so I can't really talk about it. Right. But I've thrown it out there to see what people think. And I am going to be recording the audiobooks for the home crafting series myself and releasing those in the next 6 months to a year. So.
I think I love it when the author actually reads their own book.
I do too.
They know exactly how to give the right emphasis and how to work that. So that's wonderful.
So hopefully I'll be able to do that well.
And what a neat process. Do you know anything about how that works?
I know a little bit. I'll be recording at Morningwood Studios in Fort Collins, which is owned by my friend. So I know a little bit about how he works, and he's done some audiobooks in there before that I've been able to see how that. And so it's actually going to be a little easier for me than people who have to go in and read for eight solid hours. Can you imagine doing that?
No. Out loud, perfectly, without stumbling.
Yeah. So I'll break it up, and hopefully it'll be a little easier. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I haven't read some of these books for years.
That'll be neat. You might have to you might have to reread.
Right. The first one came out in 2007, so I'll have to go back and take a look. Yeah.
So we have 3 different types of books here, and I'm going to ask you the question that people say, oh, that's like asking me to choose my favorite child. Which is your favorite series or the favorite one to write that you've enjoyed writing the most?
Well, I really right now I'm writing a magical bakery mystery. So I'm liking that. Okay. And I could go back to the Sophie Mays, but I did kind of choose to pause the home crafting mysteries. So I couldn't put that at the top of my list. Shotgun Moon was, this one-time thing, and I really wanted to tell this story. So I'm glad I did that, but I don't feel like I need to turn around to do it again right away. So.
And this new series, perhaps rattling around up there, is that something you just can't wait to get it out?
It's fun. It's fun. It was fun putting it together. It was fun coming up with ideas for the books. It was fun doing research for the plotting. So
we will be anxiously waiting for more information on that. That will be very exciting. Cricket, what can we find when we go and visit your website?
Well, there's one side for Cricket, and there's one side for Casey, and then there's it's like 2 websites kind of mushed together. So you can get from one side to the other, but there's a bio for Bailey and there's a bio for Cricket, and they overlap certainly but they're both true too. They're both me. So you can find out more about the books. You can find out about my events. There are links to my blogs. I have 2 blogs. The one it's baileycates.com.
Okay.
Is actually written from my main character's point of view, and it's called the Lightfoot Chronicles. And she's talking about what she's learning as a new witch.
Wow.
And she'll throw some of the recipes out there that maybe aren't in the back of the book but are mentioned.
What a great way for people to follow that character in between your releases of your new series.
Yeah, it's fun
That's
too
fabulous.
to continue to write in her voice.
How fun.
So
You're not giving away too much good stuff, right, though? So
no,
you can
it's
keep it in
pretty
the books.
generalized. It's not so much about the plots.
Okay. Good.
So.
What a great idea. And then you have a second blog, you said?
Yeah, that's hearthcricket.com, and that's me. That's writing and cooking and gardening and pictures and what crafts I've been up to lately, and a lot about writing, just about how writing fits into my life and how I make room for it, or how I don't manage to do that and then I need to come back to it. Or
I always like to ask writers, what one piece of advice would you give to aspiring writers who are trying to get published, maybe in the same genre as you are?
You know, it's the same that I'm afraid a lot of writers would give, and that piece of advice is to read. To read and read and read, because you learn so much by osmosis. And then if I could have a second one, I would say then find a good writing group.
Okay.
Either a critique group or somebody. There are, especially in Colorado, there's Rocky Mountain fiction writers, there's Northern Colorado writers, there's Pikes Peak writers, and I'm sure that there are others that are their support groups and their information treasure troves for writers who are learning their craft, who are learning the business, who may want to self-publish, who may want to approach a traditional publisher, all of those things. So that I would definitely say, do both of those things. Good group and read a lot.
A cricket for your next project? Are we going to see something brand new, maybe from a brand new series, or are we going to get another book from the Magical Bakery Mystery series?
Well, the new series, we'll see what happens with that. And I have some other ideas for some things that I'd like to try. Something maybe a little more historical. Yeah, the problem isn't with the idea, with having ideas, it's getting to them in a timely manner.
Yes.
So
I don't think you're the only author that has that issue
I don't think so,
either.
no.
Cricket, thank you so much for coming on the show, or whoever you are over there, or Casey, or Bailey, whoever. Thank you so much for sharing all this. So interesting to hear how you juggle the different authors and genres. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
You bet. I'd like to thank my guest today, Cricket McRae, or Casey McRae, or Bailey Cates, whoever you choose. Check your local library for the books on today's show, and join us for more next time on Off the Page.